Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. This video is my analysis and response to Tomi Lahren's tirade against Colin Kapernick. I think it's about a year ago, so sorry for being very behind the times. The Black Lives Matter movement caught on because the highest echelons of American athletes and some football players were kneeling before games started during the national anthem. Should I call them footballers? I don't know. I don't know much about American sports, as is evident, but it's not the sport that's important so much. So anyway, Tomi Lahren, she's well known for being a right-wing commentator, pundit, might be an exaggeration. She's also lubricious, which is not to demean her. Her views should be taken no more seriously and no less seriously because of her appearance, in which she clearly works hard. And I suppose it matters when you're on television. You want to look your best, but certainly get her a few hits. And one of the things Tomi Lahren is eager to point out is that even if your views are diametrically opposed to hers, she is compelling viewing. So she's certainly got an angle on things. She's bristling with opinions, and she's got a highly emotive style. Speaks about 50% faster than normal, which some people find very engaging. But I suppose it's partly because it's an anti-analytical style that she has. So she tore into Colin Kaepernick, saying that a man very close to her is about to be sent overseas to serve in the military. The rumour is that it's her boyfriend. She's got a weakness for men in uniform. The man is going to defend Kaepernick's rights. So isn't that good then, that Kaepernick is exercising his rights? There's little point in having rights if they are not exercised. I hear people say use it or lose it about their right to bear arms, people of Tomi Lahren's ilk. So I will give her credit here. It's praiseworthy that she says she concurs with freedom of expression, and she says that her man is going to protect your right to be a whiny, indulgent crybaby. That's a direct quotation, which is why I had to read it. All right then, so why should she be a whiny, indulgent crybaby about him doing that very thing? Is she whining? Seemed like it to me. Or is she vituperating him? I'm not sure that would be better. Crybaby. Now, what is Colin Kaepernick supposedly crying about? Murder? Might that be something that's worth protesting against? If someone is shot dead when they shouldn't be shot dead, at very best that would be manslaughter. But if it's deliberate, then that's murder. I can't think of anything more deserving of protest than that. Whereas, what's Tomi Lahren protesting against? Protesting? So who's the crybaby now? So actually, I disagree with Colin Kaepernick's protest, but like Tomi Lahren, I think he has the legal right to do so. People have talked about flag desecration law. I'm not American, as you may have deduced, and I don't like flag desecration laws or laws protecting emblems, and it does sometimes hack me off when people disrespect emblems, like the Irish tricolour sometimes burnt by loyalists in Northern Ireland, and I take exception to that. Don't want to see any flag torched. But anyway, I will question Tomi Lahren's premise that this man and her life is being sent abroad to defend the rights of Americans. But I shall come back to that and examine that in greater depth. So Tomi Lahren says, show a little respect, all right? As she pointed out herself, that the Stars and Stripes is for everyone, not for a particular race, but also it's not just for the military. Only a small percentage of Americans are actually in the military. It's for civilians too. And why would you bring this up, that a man who's dear to her is in the military? That doesn't lend point to her opinions. She's got no more credibility or less credibility. If someone says, well, I'm a civilian, or I have no relatives in the military, so therefore you should listen to me, that would be preposterous. And so it must automatically follow that the reverse would also be equally ridiculous. It's just a non sequitur, that because she's close to a chap who's in the military, we must agree with her. It's the argument from authority, in a sense, except she really just doesn't have authority. Anyone can be in a relationship with someone who's in the military for a while. If that military person were to say it himself, well, that might hold some water. Anyway, there are many other ways that Colin Kaepernick could protest, and I think this one is hurtful to many people, so I think it would be more apposite if he didn't do so. Anyway, some US military people will agree with Colin Kaepernick because African Americans comprise up to 25% of the US military, and a high majority of African Americans sympathise with the Black Lives Matter movement. And why wouldn't they? people of their race are being killed in significant numbers by the police, a couple of hundred a year. Now, I realise that sometimes the police need to shoot somebody dead because it's a hostage situation or a bank robbery or something. But there are many cases where it's highly contentious, to say the least, whether the police were right to shoot somebody dead. Not demonising the police. The great majority of them are fine, honest. There's a small number, might be a tiny number, who do this thing. Obviously, even one murder is too many. We'd like it to avoid it. We'd like it to be zero. Never going to be zero, but we can get it closer to that. So, Tomi Lahren then said, people who do not live under this flag are banging on the door to get in. Too true. And who doesn't want them in? Tomi Lahren, most of all. She's against illegal immigration. That's sensible. But doesn't want legal immigration. Well, virtually none. You must speak fluent English, and you must be a highly educated person, unlike her, I suppose, in order to be allowed in. But if you do speak perfect English, and you are a highly educated person, you're not that likely to want to go to the United States. You may well be happy wherever it is you live, in a more prosperous part of the world, Western Europe. Yeah, prosperous not just for the billionaires, for the middle class, even for the working class, often have a better standard of living than the average American. So that's that. Even from countries that were not that wealthy, like China or India, I've met people, professionals, and they're saying, well, I could move to the United States or a Western country, but I don't want to. Happy here. So she also ranted about this man, Colin Kapernick, making $19 million. Why tear into him about that? She's a free market fundamentalist, Tomi Lahren. You approve of the profit motive, so what's your beef with him being amply rewarded for playing a sport? You say that he makes so much money for throwing a ball, her boyfriend will make a tiny fraction of that for possibly getting killed. Well, who's smarter? I mean, the market has obviously put a value on one versus the other, and she adulates Donald J. Trump, who's constantly boasting about the billions he made, avoiding Vietnam on the most spurious medical grounds. So the market has obviously put a value on these. Anyway, then Tomi Lahren says, when will leaders of the black community take responsibility for the problems of black communities? Well, that's a good question. I think that many African-American politicians would notice that there are some problems in their communities, and there's certain individuals who are responsible for this, and people obviously got to take some responsibility for their choices at a personal level, all the rest of it. Yeah, I think that's true, and I've heard, Bill Cosby, not that he's really rated anymore, or the Reverend Jesse Jackson make this point, or various African-American commentators, Obama likewise. So I think they do, but the difficulties that African-Americans face are certainly not entirely their own making, as Tomi Lahren wouldn't have to look too far into any history books to discover some of the root causes of the challenges faced by African-Americans. So coming back to why is the US military abroad? Well, it's a whole other video, really. They're not there for the liberty of the average American so much, for geopolitical reasons, for strategic reasons. Al-Qaeda gave their 3 reasons for 9/11. It was the illegal occupation of Palestine, it was sanctions against Iraq, and it was the presence of the US military in Saudi Arabia. Numbers 2 and 3 have been resolved. Number 1 is still there. So they didn't express any desire to conquer the United States. Likewise, ISIS. For the most part, not really the Western world. Some of these Islamists have talked about conquering Al-Andalus, as in Spain. So I think she deludes herself when she says it's really about the liberties of ordinary Americans. So why is it they attack the United States so much, or the American presence abroad, really? Like, not just troops, but like consulates, businesses, things like that. Why do they do it to Canadians who've got virtually the same lifestyle, or Western European countries like Switzerland, ever, particularly, because they're neutral, because they're not involved in the affairs of the Middle East. Anyway, and those organizations, those terrorist organizations such as ISIS, they exist for political, economic, national reasons. That's the cause they're fighting for, partly religious, but also the foregoing. But I wouldn't expect Ms. Lahren to know all that. Well, it was a scintillating rant when she reviled Colin Kaepernick. So that's that. That's my say.